Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Hi, I want to welcome you to this webinar. It's a part of the Into the Classroom series that we're producing for you, thanks to the help of Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. My name is Michael P. Coleman. I'll be your host today. And we're bringing you, as a part of this series, a series of informational webinars that highlight agencies that are doing some really fantastic work in the community. Today's fantastic organization is called Safe Black Space. And I want to introduce you to three friends from Safe Black Space. First of all, I want to introduce you to Dr. Christy Hagans. She is the executive director and she's the founding member of Safe Black Space. How are you doing, Dr. Hagans?
Great. Thanks so much for having us, Michael. It's good to be here.
It's really good to have you. Looking forward to this conversation. Next up, Dr. Tia Hairston. I'd like to introduce to you. She's the president of the board of directors at Safe Black Space. Dr. Hairston, how are you?
Peace. I'm well. Thank you for having us.
It's
Super
really
excited to be here.
Really great to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a long time, so we're looking forward to it. And I want to introduce you as well to Monica Nelson. She's brand new to the team at Safe Black Space. She's the program manager there. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much, Michael. It is a pleasure to be here. Very excited.
Cannot wait to get into this conversation. The name of the organization itself, Safe Black Space. I think anyone with a drop of Black blood in them feels warm, feels welcomed by that. And we'll maybe talk about the naming of the organization in a minute. But you folks have provided some slides for us to take a look at. So let's just roll through, and I've got a question or two about each of those. Safe Black Space, designed for people of African ancestry experiencing racial stress and trauma. Dr. Hagans, you want to elaborate on any of that for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just start with acknowledging the inception of Safe Black Space. We originated out of Sacramento after the tragic killing of Stephon Clark. And part of what kind of my history in terms of what I have done and known is that we are impacted as Black people by racism, by the anti-Blackness that exists in our world, and it can create feelings of stress, trauma, overwhelm for us. And so we emerged as a place and a space for us to get support that we needed so critically at that time, as well as still currently right now.
Yeah, I don't think support to African Americans is anything new. We've needed that support for centuries.
That's right.
As far as I'm concerned. So we're thankful to people like the three of you that bring organizations and services under the umbrella of Safe Black Space. Let's take a look at that next piece of information you put together, because this has a term in it I couldn't wait to ask you about. Safe Black Space creates opportunities for people of African ancestry to heal and thrive. And you mentioned there racism. You're in the face of racism and anti-Blackness. And I really wanted to talk to you, Dr. Hagans, about that. There's a notion out there that some people might not understand. Can you describe and define anti-Blackness for our viewers?
Absolutely. When we say racism, I think many of us are familiar with that phrase, right? And yet there's another layer that we can add to that in terms of anti-Blackness, that there are historically and presently various things that have been put in place that are anti-Black, and in the sense of recognizing or promoting the idea, if you will, of white supremacy or white superiority, and in that same vein, the idea of Black inferiority. And so when we talk about anti-Blackness, it is being very explicit about the realities that there are, again, policies, things that have been in place historically and presently that have been targeting us and our people. And so our intention, again, is to recognize that. And as was indicated on that previous slide, also recognizing that we can still heal, that we can thrive in spite of the situations that we may be experiencing on a day-to-day basis.
We've proven that over the years, haven't we, Doctor?
That's
We're
right.
resilient people. We can make it through, but we need each other to do that, and we need services like the ones that you're providing. Really, really want to thank you again for that. Next question up. Let's take a look at that next slide there. It talks about the historical and current racial wounds. And I'm really wondering, maybe Tia, you could talk about that, Dr. Hairston, rather. Can you talk about those racial wounds that exist?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can start by just the fact that we've been separated from our motherland. We were taken away from what we knew as culture, our families, right? So we had to rebuild family. Our children were taken away from us as women. We were raped. Men were breeded with us. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to heal from. That's just the enslavement part. We haven't even gotten to talking about Jim Crow and redlining and lynching and, you know, the criminal justice system. So there's so much to heal from. And so that is the sole purpose of Safe Black Space, to be a place where we can talk about all of that, where we can dig into all of that and be able to do so from a place of vulnerability, from a place of truth and honesty, and not having to concern ourselves about a white gaze, right? Other people looking at us and wondering or trying to figure out our truths. We know our truths. And so that is our goal, is just to be together, to get together, provide a space that is culturally relevant, that is, centered in Africanness and Blackness and the pride of Blackness, the beauty of Blackness, in spite of all of the terrible things that happened to us. The beauty of it is that we survived. We are the descendants or the ascendants of those who made it over, who thrive in some way, shape, or form, not only survived, but thrived in a way that they were able to reproduce and, to give us this moment in time to be able to be good, to learn how to be good ancestors, to be the ones that other people will call on, like we call on our ancestors who endured so much for us to be able to be where we are today. So there's a lot to heal from, Michael. We could go on and on about that. And that's exactly why we have Safe Black Space once a month, because we need to talk about it.
Right.
I knew when we got into this conversation that I was going to get that feeling from you, sister, talking about, Dr. Hairston, you rattled off quite a list there. Can we all agree, before we get to that next slide, it should be no surprise that anyone of African ancestry is carrying a lot with them. We have been through quite a lot. And the list that you just mentioned, Dr. Hairston, is one of the ones when I feel stuck myself, when I feel like I'm against a wall, I can't push through, or maybe sometimes those walls are closing in. I remember what those ancestors have been through. I remember what my people have been through. Just 2 days ago, I said, you know what? I've not spent 3 months in the hold of a ship. I've not been kidnapped from my homeland and dragged over here. So if they dealt with that, I can deal with this problem that's in front of me. And I'm not trying to lessen the problem. But would you agree that we've all got that with us? No matter, you may think you're not impacted by it, Dr. Hagins, maybe you can touch on that. Even for people that might not think they need it, you need it more than you think you do. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just kind of highlight what Tia had said as well, and some of what I was saying in the intro, that while we exist because we know anti-Blackness is present, that we have reactions to racism as it comes up in our lives, the other part that's really super important of our work and our services are to make sure that we are connected with the truth of who we are, that we celebrate our Blackness and our culture, that we're not ashamed of that. And so we try to do that balance of this is real, right? The racism, the ways in which the enslavement, the ma'afa, the disconnection that we have been taught for each other or from each other as a result of all of that. That even in spite of all of that, that there's this core resilience that runs so deep and strong. And so that's a real big part of our mission or our vision as well, is to be able to say, yes, we are African people. We are of African ancestry. We are not descendants of, because we're still here, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, whether people recognize it or not at some level, I think we are all impacted. If you are living and walking and breathing in the world as a Black person, by many of the experiences that connects all of us across the diaspora because of this thinking and this way that we've been taught. Everybody has been taught. Yeah.
Such a beautiful way to put it. So thank you so much, Doctor, for
Mhm.
explaining that for us. Let's take a look at that next slide, because I've got another question for you, Dr. Hagans, and when we take a look at it. This one speaks about people who self-identify as being of African ancestry, those people we were just talking about, who may be experiencing racial stress and trauma and seek support, connection, and a sense of community with other people who get it. And that phrase made me smile. Maybe it was the quotation marks that brought a smile to my face. Dr. Hagans, could you explain briefly who those people are who get it, how you know them when you see them, how can we identify those people who get it, and then what role do they play in our overall healing?
Yeah, well, let me just acknowledge that our community healing circles, we'll talk in a little bit about the various services and support that we offer, but we're very clear that for our community healing circles, the people who get it as we define it are other Black people, people who are of African ancestry with a lived Black experience, who can relate, not to say we're all the same, right? It's not a monolith, but who have walked in very similar shoes. And so the invitation for our healing circles is that we are in communication and conversation and healing with each other, kind of from that frame. I will quote our dear sister, one of our other board members, Dr. Jacqueline Ollison, who will sometimes refer to her experience, I know mine as well, for many of us, depending on where we work or go to school or where we live, where it can feel like we are the only piece of pepper in the salt shaker, right? You get that analogy, or there's just a couple of pieces of pepper and you're in the salt shaker, and how warming and feeling like you're at home when you can be in the midst of people who look like you, who again have shared experience. And so part of that getting it is being able to have a container and a frame and a sacred space for us to be with us. That doesn't mean that I don't recognize or we don't recognize that there are allies or other people outside of our community that may also have some understanding, but we invite them to find other ways to help and to support, at least when it comes to our, our internal kind of healing experience, because we need, as Dr. Tia mentioned, places where we're not that Black gaze, where people are watching or looking or somehow may create a different experience for us. So yeah, that's what that Get It is all about in terms of our definition of what we do and why we do what we do. And yeah, I'll leave it there. There's more I could say, but I'll leave it there.
I can't wait to get over to Safe Black Space. I was just reminded, Dr. Hagans, of a DEI training that I attended just this morning, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I walked in the room, and when I walked in, I was the only brother in the room. And I'm looking around thinking, okay, this is going to be a long haul. And when the second brother walked in, I can't tell you how I felt. I thought, oh, thank God, I'm not in this by myself. But there'll be another Black man here to help me out. But it's critically important that we surround ourselves with people who get it. So that I'm thankful to you for outlining things for us there. Monica, I've got a question for you right now. I want to talk about the need for, and it relates to the next slide that we like to show you. It relates to the need for culturally competent mental health care. I've been in conversations where there's some debate about exactly what it is and then how important it is. And those debates have been a little disturbing for me. So I wanted you to explain first, what would you call culturally competent mental health care? What is cultural competence there? And then why is that so very critical?
Absolutely. I think it's such an interesting topic because there are different cultures, as we know, but pertaining to the work we do here at Safe Black Space, as Dr. Christie said, our experiences are our own. And there is this generational trauma that many of us face, and it continues even as time changes. And we don't often know that that trauma is there. We can't often identify it. And so when we're finding ourselves in places in healthcare and clinics where we do have other aspects that we need to unpack, those are some of the things that we really want to define as cultural competence. You may find that high blood pressure, for an example, hypertension, some of these things are very common in the Black community. And it's common for us to often just think, oh, that just runs in the family. But what we may be failing to recognize is that's something that's passed down generationally through those different lines of trauma in our experiences. I think a big portion of cultural competence as well is representation. I'm so honored to be a part of this team because my colleagues, my staff, my volunteers, we all look alike. Sometimes you don't have to say anything just to know that we understand each other. And when you look at the fact that you can't relate when we're not seeing a lot of Black healthcare providers or even just community advocates that can really show they understand exactly where our story is. So to me, that's really what cultural competence entails. And again, why we create these community events, which we'll talk more about later.
Can't wait to talk about a little bit those community events. Maybe this is one of the events you were talking about, your community healing circles.
I wanted to tag on to what Monica had shared about cultural competence.
Please.
All of that she mentioned, I think, is really critical, but I also wanted to mention as it relates to mental health in particular, that when we have providers that may not understand our experience, our identity, our history, we may not feel seen, we may not be heard, we may be misdiagnosed, right? So we get a diagnosis that is not aligned with our true experience, which then can result in not being treated in the adequate form. So we might be over-medicated, we might be hospitalized, we might have law enforcement called on us when we're in actually a psychiatric crisis because, again, we're perceived differently. And so all of those things compound on this idea of cultural competence. And so, the previous slide acknowledged that as Safe Black Space, we don't provide therapy, but we recognize that therapy sometimes is not helpful. It can be re-traumatizing, right? And a colleague, another psychologist friend of mine, talks about how not all therapy is healing and not all healing has to involve therapy. And so we understand that part of what we provide in community is a sense of medicine for each other. So I invite you as we move forward and talk about our community healing circles. I think Monica's going to speak a little bit more to that, which takes into account this cultural way of being. So I just didn't want to let us miss the opportunity to make sure that we were aware of the mental health connections to this as well.
And I'm glad you did. And before we talk about community healing circles, Dr. Hagens, let me ask you a follow-up question to what you just said. Can you outline briefly how someone, if interested in seeking mental health care, how do they go about finding a healthcare provider who's culturally competent? Many, I don't know if people would promote that on Avita or on their website, or, what kind of questions can you ask to get at whether or not someone's really culturally competent?
That's a great question. I think a couple things come to mind. One is being able to ask that question. Well, first of all, you got to figure out where to get help from, where to seek support. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes within our community, we'll go to our faith leaders. We might go to our medical providers. We might show up at the ER. Sometimes, we'll go to family and friends. And so the first step is just acknowledging, where can I go just maybe first to ask for help? And those are different avenues. Once someone decides I'm ready to do that, right, it might be a phone call to the county mental health services that are available in that particular area that they live. It might mean looking up, for example, the Association of Black Psychologists and seeing if there's providers. It might be going to the American Psychologist website and being able to identify and put in markers for who you want to work with. It might be going to the website of Beam. There's various resources. But once you have identified a provider, you can ask them just very directly, what's your experience in working with Black people, right? Like, tell me a little bit about your style and what you do. What is your theoretical orientation, if you will, in terms of your style, so that you can do your own personal assessment. And to me, that is one of the most key things. Like if your gut is like, I don't like this person, I don't trust this person, I don't think they get me. I mean, you want to give it a chance, right? But if your soul is like, this is misaligned, that is your immediate kind of indicator that this may not be the right person for me. And you can ask, right? If you are on, I'm sorry, I could go on and on, but if you have insurance, right? And maybe you have a panel that you're working with, or even like Kaiser, for example, you can ask for a Black provider. You can ask for someone who might be LGBTQ. You can ask, right? And again, not to say that everybody who's Black gets it or whatever, but we have the right to make those requests. And then when they're not honored, to demand, like, well, how can we make this happen? Right. So those are some.
And I would think that a lot of organizations may be helped, that you might wind up improving that organization by just posing the question. Because if enough of us ask the question, then those organizations who aren't offering culturally competent care might say, wait a minute, this is something that the community is demanding. So be a part of that community and ask for what you need.
Absolutely. And I think Dr. Tia a little later will talk about our resource list and ways that we try to help people get connected with folks.
We'll get to her in just a second. Monica, I'm not going to let you off the hook talking about those community healing circles. Tell us about them, please. I've been waiting to hear about it.
Oh my goodness. Well, these are so wonderful. We actually just had our last community healing circle on Saturday, March 9th. So we hold these once a month, the second Saturday of each month. And I have to say, these are so humbling because this was actually my introduction to Safe Black Space when I moved to Sacramento a few months before the pandemic. I happened to be attending a George Floyd protest, and a community member came up to me and shared this resource. So I know for me personally, being able to be at my home, be on screen, since we were all in the isolation of our homes, being in a new city, this is actually what made me feel extremely connected to Sacramento and its Black community. What I like in a lot of the aspects of today's conversation is we really talk about how our work is rooted in the history of our enslavement. And I find that many generational aspects of trauma that we still face is a great way for us when we open our circles. We really try to acknowledge the work that our people have contributed to this, contributed to this environment and where we're at now. We really want to honor our elders. We recognize our labor. We open with libation and really just hold some space to make sure that we feel at presence and a really kind of understanding we have a long way to go. And this is that opportunity for people to come as they are. We do interactive exercises. Miss Tia led one this Saturday, and it was great getting everyone moving on our feet. And this to me is really what symbolizes how I like therapy. Being able to see people logging in, not just through Sacramento and California. We actually have people visiting from international places as well. So that global recognition we're getting for anyone recognizing they need healing who identifies with African ancestry, these healing circles are just phenomenal. And we really encourage you to come out. And we're getting ready for our next one in April, and just so eager to be able to open that to anyone who needs that community.
Monica, before we go on to the next slide, I've got a follow-up for you. Can you say something, talk to the person for whom an event like a community healing circle might be a little foreign, for lack of a better word. As Dr. Hagans mentioned, some of us with melanated skin, we're more connected to our ancestors' way of doing things than we might be. So it sounded like to me, some of those activities might be a little different for some people walking into one of those healing circles. So can you say a thing or two to help those of us who are dipping a toe into that feel a little bit more comfortable showing up next month?
Absolutely. Well, we accept everyone as they are. So we really want people to know this is an opportunity for you to be able to not only learn about resources in the community, but sometimes hearing stories from other people's challenges, areas of growth, or just areas of struggle can be what makes you feel at home when you come. We don't force anyone to participate, although we would like that. Sometimes having that opportunity to take a step back and observe, because ultimately our goal with these healing circles are to fill your cup with, hopefully you have one takeaway as you depart our session. But what our goal is to be able to create a toolbox of coping skills, and that's going to differ per the individual. So if you're someone who's already very active, perhaps you do have therapy, but you still feel like, as we said earlier, that representation, you may not have a Black therapist. So getting one extra aspect to tie into the work you're already doing is really the ultimate goal. For some people that just know, hey, this pandemic, I'm feeling a little uneasy. Something isn't aligned. I'm working, I'm at home, I have my family, and we're seeing this cultural divide. I personally didn't know what I was going to step into, but I just knew I was new to Sacramento. I wanted to get to know more about the Black community here, and I wasn't going to let the shelter in place stop me. And so this has actually been a really great way that I've had the pleasure of working and meeting with both Dr. Tia and Dr. Christy through these opportunities. And so I think for me, I also want people to know, with this virtual aspect, we're coming to you. And we hope that accessibility piece as well gives people that opportunity to feel at home. And hey, if it's too heavy and folks need to log off early, that's okay. But we hope just that little bit. It doesn't have to be the all or nothing, just that little piece that gets people wondering and curious, I believe, is truly what kind of plants the seed for folks getting more intentional and feeling more comfortable as this work continues.
I believe that this session we're doing right now is going to help maybe break down some of those, I won't even say barriers, but for anyone who might be a little reticent about joining you, I think the three of you it's a solid presentation. There's nothing to be tentative about. And Dr. Hagan, you're nodding. Anything you wanted to add to that?
I can always add something. I wanted to just highlight this idea, because you were saying, gosh, what if people are like, I don't know, what is this libation thing? Or right, this is very different. And just this concept I was saying earlier about, we want us to embrace our culture, our history, our Africanness, like all of that is beautiful. And I'm sure some folks may be familiar with the term of Sankofa. And so Sankofa means to reach back and get it, right? To reach back and get the good stuff of who we are and who we were pre-enslavement, right? So we do want to talk about all the trauma that's resulted from that. We call the Ma'afa, that disconnection from our families, our continent, our land, our language, like all of those things, and take it back even further. And so we love introducing different aspects of lessons that our ancestors knew. And so this idea of Sankofa is one of those. And so every time that we meet, we are intentionally trying to introduce some of these historical pieces. Again, whether it's acknowledging our ancestors through libation or doing African drumming, but also kind of having themes that carry us each month. And so we believe in holistic health and wellness. And so we our focus last month was on mind. This month it's on body. Next month it'll be on spirit. And so we're wanting to kind of do this deep dive into how do we take care of ourselves as Black people, as African ancestry-centered people, again, living in the current world and pulling out what works and what we sometimes just know instinctively works for us.
Thank you so much. And Monica, tell us once again before we move on, when are those circles? When's the next one? Because I know people are going to want to be there.
So our circles are the second Saturdays of each month. So our next circle will be on Saturday, April 14th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
And we'll look forward to seeing everybody there. I want to appreciate both of you for sharing information on that. Dr. Hairston, talk about a little bit before we run out of time, the community healing circles, as vibrant as they are, that's not everything that you're doing with regard to programming. So we've got a slide on some of the other offerings of Safe Black Space. Let's take a look at it.
Yes.
To talk about one or
So
two of those.
yeah, absolutely. So, as we were talking about earlier, just all of these things that we're healing from, right? And we have to look at how they manifest in our lives currently, right? Our relationships with each other, our careers, our education. And so we try to make sure that we are drawing attention to those things and keeping those things in the forefront of our minds. And so one of the things we do is a book study. So we're, adding to that education piece. A lot of people, don't have the luxury of certain educational experiences. And so we try to make it a community space, right? Where we just get together, read a book. Maybe you read the chapter this week, maybe you didn't, but you're going to get the lesson one way or another. And so we do the book study group. We also do a Kwanzaa Kutoa event every year, annually, to honor and recognize and acknowledge and love on 7 families for each day of Kwanzaa. And so we do a big party, a big giveaway, eating, dancing, drumming, things that Black folks do. That's what we do for Kwanzaa Kutoa. And we also have a drum circle once a month. So we call it like our healing weekend, because the second Saturday of the month is Safe Black Space virtual meetup. And then Sunday, the second Sunday of the month, we do the drum circles. And the drum circles is in collaboration with YMO, Yours, Mine, Ours. And there's just a collective of a bunch of community organizations, Safe Black Space, We Love Holistic, a bunch of others. And we just get together, we drum, we dance, we chant, we, sing, we do all the things, we eat, and we love on each other. We try to rebuild those relationships that were strained during our enslavement. We try to rebuild those, just trying to understand one another again, trying to come together again, unify, and be in community and ask for help and share resources. And so all of these activities are our way of trying to bring that love back into our communities and restore and replenish and revive and just all the things, bring us back to that oneness, that ma'at. And so, yeah, Christy, do you have anything to add on some of the stuff that we're doing or getting ready to do or want to do?
I think Michael said we're out of time, so I am not going to. I just will add one thing because I think it's critical to the conversation, but there's many things. We have had the pleasure of just hiring 2 new staff and are looking forward to being able to continue to build up and out the things that we're doing. But the one thing I really do want to make sure that I mention is on our website at safeblackspace.org, I think we will see a slide on that in just a moment. We do have a list which is under construction or development or being expanded, but I do want to direct people as interested now on our resources tab. There is a list that we call our Mind, Body, Spirit Community Resource List. And in that is an Excel sheet where you can go by tab and click on Mind and find a number of providers that are primarily in the Sacramento area, but beyond, that are Black identified or Black affirming. And same for body and for spirit. And so we anticipate building and expanding on that, making it more interactive and friendly. But for now, we're really proud of being able to have compiled in collaboration with some other folks, but to have compiled a list where people really can say, look, I do want to talk to somebody. I'm trying to find a faith community, and being able to know that these are some places and some folks who look like us, who are committed to doing this work.
And we are almost out of time, but I can't let you get away, the 3 of you, without asking, maybe you, Dr. Hagins, can you talk about briefly the impact that you've had with all of these programs? So you've been at it for more than a handful of years now. Can you share with us a story or two or some type of indication of the impact that you've already had? There's no doubt meeting Monica as a new team member, and then Dr. Harrison, you've got a great team there. So I know the work that's going to be done moving forward. What have you seen as of today in terms of positive change?
Well, one of the things, and this is not let me just offer this. One of the things, we started Safe Black Space. It'll be 6 years in April. Again, I mentioned after the tragic killing of Stephon Clark. Part of my impetus in starting it as an African-centered psychologist and doing some of this work across the state for years was like, we needed it, right? It's very clear there was a call in the community, like, where are the mental health professionals? We are having problems. You know, the city was a lot going on. And our intention was to offer a community healing circle. Like, we showed up maybe 10 days within 2 weeks of the killing and offered the circle. And then people are like, well, when's the next one? Like, okay, so we did one the next month, right? And then it's become now 6 years later. So to me, when I talk about impact, it's the reality that we have needed this within our Black community for all of these years, that people keep coming. New people come. Some people are regulars, but are like, yes, they are getting fed. They're getting and feeling a sense of community and connection with each other. I've had a few people actually really recently say, I don't know if I would have made it, similar to what Monica shared, through the pandemic, if not for Safe Black Space, right? Just having a place where folks could come. I think another very significant impact that we've had is with our Kwanzaa, with our Kutoa, being able to impact 7 different families over the past 5 years, and to kind of see how some of them have like grown and developed and are recommitted like to their own lives or to our work. And I have a very distinct memory from someone, and we want to hold private for this particular person, but who was a single mom just getting out of an abusive relationship with 2 young children, who felt so loved, seen, and supported, and was able to kind of, in many ways, kind of get back on her feet because of what we provided to her. And what I will close with, and if Monica and Dr. T, if time permits, have other comments to make, is as staff members, as facilitators, as our board has been a working board, I will say, beyond a governing board, that we pour out, right? We are pouring into our community, but just in that same way, we are being fed and filled. And so it's a very reciprocal healing process. And so I will speak for myself when Monica, I think, was referring to her, maybe it was Tia, about second weekends or healing weekends. I'm so good today because we had Safe Black Space Healing Circle on Saturday. We drummed and danced all day and all night yesterday. I'm like, let's go. Let's get it. Anything. We can do anything. And so that, I guess, would be my closing comments.
So amazing. Monica or Dr. Tia, any other closing remarks before we've got to let you go?
I honestly have to say both ladies spoke so eloquently. I too resonate a lot, again, with what Ms. Tia said, where, coming into a new environment and just finding, there were a lot of, you could say, kind of biases with me moving to Sacramento, where people were just so quick to kind of judge, oh, it's kind of a violent neighborhood and it's very segregated. And then others say, oh, it's very diverse. And so for me, I'm all about healing the Black community, and I do my best on being a leader by example, and also being transparent when I'm also going through those challenges and need other healers or people who are not healers to give me advice. And so I find just being a part of this, whether you've attended our events, you've heard the name, the name in itself, Safe Black Space, makes me feel welcome. And this is something that I have seen through 5 years now of residing in Sacramento, where we are growing and growing. People are knowing the name. People want to get more involved. And so it's just humbling. I did not know Miss Tia, met her Guy in the midst of the pandemic with all of these things going on. And so really just that light at the end of the tunnel, it really shows how that is how we're holding space for our folks, for our community.
We've got a final slide, I believe, that shows some contact information, ways in which our viewers can connect with you guys. So take a look at that. You're on all the socials, Instagram and Facebook, website right there, safeblackspace.org. There's an email address for you. Please reach out to our new friends over at Safe Black Space. Dr. Christy, Dr. Tia, and Monica Nelson, thanks so much for joining us today. I will tell you that you have absolutely filled this cup right here. Y'all have filled this cup just today during this production. I can't wait to check out one of those healing circles.
Can't wait for you to join us. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot. Take care. We'll
you so
talk to you
much.
soon.
Mhm.
And I want to thank you for watching this webinar. Please come back to us as a part of this Into the Classroom series being brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. You can check out everything that they're all about at bluesky.blueshieldca.com. That's bluesky.blueshieldca.com. My name again, Michael P. Coleman, and I've been your host today. Great pleasure of mine to serve in that capacity for you. Come on back, and we'll talk to you very soon. Until next time, bye-bye, and God bless.